So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the large rock outside the Pabatakuti, and thought to record a short awada for the internet. So I thought I could start with just a little meditation, so we can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And can relax any patterns of tension around the cheeks, around the chin. And can practice breathing in and out from this area at the tip of the nose. And when breathing in and out from the tip of the nose, it can be good to try to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. Being aware all the way through the in-breath, as the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, trying to keep mindfulness as continuous as possible. If any thoughts of the past or the future come up, you can just bring back the mind back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill. Wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite, can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. And can open our eyes and do a short Ovada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Ditiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Ditiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Ditiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So hope that everybody's keeping well wherever it might be, and have about maybe one more week left at the Pavatakoti here, and then maybe heading to another area for some time, see how it goes. And so here in Sri Lanka there's all these really amazing opportunities. There's kind of many different kutis. Actually just here, looking over here, there's this forest behind me, or there's a plain behind me, and ringing the plain are these mountains. And likely inside of these mountains here, there's going to be ruins of some kind, maybe ancient caves of some kind. And the Sri Lankan government is very generous towards the Sangha. And if a monk wants to build a kuti inside of a forest, it's usually possible to get permission to build it there. So now, having been in Sri Lanka for a few years, I've traveled around, and traveling around I've actually seen that there's all these different kutis in different places. Kind of some are maintained by the villagers, some are owned by monasteries, and people are usually very happy to have a monk go there and stay there, and sometimes even sad when he goes. So it's a really wonderful thing. And there's all these various opportunities, and one of the things that can happen if one isn't careful is that one can end up going to one kuti in one place and then going to another kuti in another place and another place and another place. There's just so many different places where one could go. It's one could probably spend years traveling between monasteries and different kutis and these kind of things, and maybe still not reach the end of it. There's that many places here in Sri Lanka. So can't remember where I'd heard it before. Either heard it or read it somewhere, I think. It's kind of, there's this phrase that either heard or read or maybe thought of. But it's basically, there's a way that a person can leave like a king, and there's a way that he can leave like a pauper. In other words, there's a way that one can come to places like a king, and there's a way that one can come to places like a pauper. There's a way that one can leave places like a king, and there's ways that one can leave places like a pauper. In other words, if one is engaging in a Buddhist practice, then ideally one's purpose for going to a certain place is a Dhamma purpose. There's a particular reason one wants to go there. One wants to grow in the Dhamma in a particular way, being at that place. There's a reason that one goes there. And ideally one won't always have 100% clear reason, but one should have an idea of why it is that one's there, and what it is that one's hoping to develop there, and whether or not one is developing appropriately in that place, in that way. So I was reading a sutta just yesterday, and it's one in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Nines, and it's the Venerable Sariputta describes these different things that are to be associated with and not to be associated with. There's dwellings and people and robes and alms food that are to be associated, and towns and villages and countries that are to be associated with or not associated with. And so basically, so long as one is, the gist of it is that so long as one is growing in one's practice in a particular place, then it's good to be there. It's to be associated with that person or that city or that alms food or whatever it might be. So when one goes to a place and wants to grow in one's practice there, it's also the case that one, for example, there's many areas around here. It's quite possible that there's kuttis on that mountain or that mountain. And the climate would probably be similar to here, not very different, and the setup would probably be similar to here, and kind of very lovely, amazing setup. So one could grow in similar ways, likely in all these different places. But one can also have this idea of going to a place, setting out to a place for the sake of trying to develop in particular qualities. There can be a larger framework to one's life. I remember kind of when I was young, I used to like to do this, what they called like skin diving. In Canada, the lakes can be very murky. It's kind of not like the Caribbean or anything like this. Sometimes you can't see like 5 feet down. If you're standing at the surface of the lake, on the shore, or looking down from a boat, then you can barely see like 5 or 10 feet down. So when you go and scuba dive or skin dive, then what happens is you go down a little bit and you can see another 5 feet. And you go down a little bit more, you can see another 5 feet. And then beyond that 5 feet, you can't see. But you can often see all the way back up to the top of the water. So that's the way that it usually goes. And so when one goes to a particular place or has a particular destination that one's living in or staying in or doing something in, it can often be good to have an idea of what one wants to try to develop in that place, and what it is that one's there for. Now, of course, as mentioned a little bit earlier, one doesn't know this 100%, but this can be a little bit like seeing the 5 feet in front. Maybe I'll be in this place for this amount of time, like a year or 2 years. And in this 1 or 2 years, I'm hoping to develop in this way. Now, this is the reason why I'm here. And this is what I'm hoping to do here. The way that things work, it might not exactly be that way. It might not work out exactly according to one's plans, but having this kind of general idea. And one can say that, in a sense, this is a little bit like arriving like a king. There's this one aspect to arriving like a king. And kind of one has an idea that there's a purpose for one's being in a place. It's not that one just wants to go there because it looks nice, or one is having a good feeling there, or something like this. So this is one aspect to going to a place and arriving there like a king. There's another aspect to going to a place and arriving at that place like a king. And so there's this rational aspect where one is basically trying to think, what is it that I'm here for? But then there's also this, what you might call, intuitive aspect to one's reasons for coming and going from places. So both these things work together. Both the rational and intuitive faculty work together in Buddhist practice. And so one also wants to have this intuitive feeling, something about this feels right. This is the right time for me to be here. This is the right place for me to be, to do this. And sometimes this intuitive feeling trumps the rational. It kind of has these very strong reasons, and sometimes the rational trumps the intuitive. But they ideally go together and mesh quite well. And it's kind of saying trumps means that sometimes one's reasons for going to that place will be more strongly influenced by intuition or more strongly influenced by rationality. But eventually both of those qualities should come to bear on one staying in the place and developing in that place. So this is the second aspect to arriving at a place like a king rather than like a pauper, is that there's not just these reasons, these rational reasons that one wants to go, but there's also something about it that feels right. I remember when I was a young man, I was staying at a Mahayana temple and thought that I really liked Theravada Buddhism, and then thought, I should just go to a Theravada country right now and go stay in a Theravada monastery right now. But something about it didn't feel like the right time. It felt like the right time, the right place was to be at this Mahayana temple with this particular teacher and learning from him. And rationally, thinking about it later, could see the reasons why that was a good fit. It was a good place to be at that time. But in that case, intuition would trump, because rationally could come up with all these reasons why it's better to go to a Theravada country. So In other words, both these things can come together and work in tandem so that one's being in a place, one's developing in a place, is something that both feels right and one knows there's particular things that one is trying to develop there. And both this intuitive faculty and the rational faculty can support each other in making good decisions and making decisions that will help one to grow on one's path. So that's the other aspect, one might say, to arriving at a place like a king. And the reasons for departing from a place like a king are similar. There can be this rational aspect to the reasons for departing. One knows, I came to this place to try to do this, and this. And I wanted to try to develop in these things. And I've been here for this amount of time, and I tried my best to do this, and this, and I feel like it's good enough. Or now things are good enough, it would be more beneficial for me to go to another place to try to develop further in this way. And this is the rational aspect. And there's also this intuitive aspect where it feels like this is the right time to go. This is the right time to go. And this is coming like a king and going like a king. There's always these reasons that one comes, these reasons that one goes. One isn't being pushed around by the wind. One is kind of arriving for a purpose, departing for a purpose. And that purpose is a purpose that's related to the Dhamma, related to growing in the Dhamma. So this is kind of arriving and departing like a king. And one can arrive and depart like a pauper as well as arrive and depart like a king. And here in arriving and departing like a pauper, sometimes one may be quite strong in a particular faculty, either intuition or rationality. And one's desires, one's defilements can hijack that faculty. And if it's not checked by its opposite, if rationality isn't checked by intuition, if intuition isn't checked by rationality, then sometimes one's defilements can hijack one's strengths. In other words, I was staying at this Mahayana temple and thinking, I should really go. time to pick up and go, But it wasn't the right time. I was learning well there, and under that particular teacher, things were going well, but it wasn't easy. So very easy to come up with all these reasons why it's better to go. So in that case, actually, there was a couple of times I did leave that temple, but it didn't feel right, so I came back. I think more than once. At least there was one time I left, but more than once I wanted to leave. And in leaving that one time that I left, it wasn't the right time. Kind of leaving like a pauper. I was kind of having difficulty training under the teacher and not wanting to put up with the difficulties. So coming up with reasons or just, getting up and going wasn't the right time. So actually ended up coming back. So this is kind of leaving like a pauper. One leaves because of some desire that's connected to one's defilements. It's not the right time to go. One still should stay in that place to develop in the way that one came for, to develop in the purpose that one was there for. And now is not the right time to go. Similarly, there's also, in monastic life, one can meet or see or experience that there's also these times when if one is a more intuitive type, a more feeling type, then one can sometimes get blown around quite a bit by inspiration. Just kind of go to stay with this teacher and it's inspiring for a little while and then it becomes normal and then one gets up and goes to find another teacher. It's kind of inspiring for a while and then one gets up and goes to go to another teacher. And places are the same. There's kind of this Kuti is very inspiring for a while, then it gets normal and time to go. So the defilements can also hijack this intuitive faculty. So this intuitive faculty also needs to be checked by the rational faculty to determine when's the right time to go. So I was reading in kind of Ajahn Mun's biography, I think a couple days ago. And he was staying at a place and had stayed there for a certain amount of time, and then it was time for him to go. And the people at that place didn't want him to go. It's kind of like describing here in Sri Lanka and Thailand. It's the same kind of people like the monks to stay at that place. And so he said to them, I have a reason for coming, I have a reason for going. It's kind of the same way that I came here for a reason, now I have a reason to leave. And if one can arrive like a king and depart like a king, then one's staying in places is beneficial. It doesn't become something that's edgy for one's practice. It becomes something that's governed and determined by the Dhamma, rather than governed and determined by desires that are connected with kilesas. But to do this well, whatever one's strength is, whether it's intuition, whether it's rationality, it can be helpful to have this kind of balance, such that one both feels like it's the right time to come and knows one's reasons for coming. And one staying, one knows or feels, okay, I'm developing in this way. The purpose for which I came here, this is the reason why it feels good to be here, why it felt like I should come. I'm trying to develop in this way. And one can gauge whether or not that's going well. And then at the time when it's time to go, when one's motives or one's aims have, more or less been fine enough, done okay, then it may be better to move along to another place to develop, to try to develop further. And if one can do things in this way, then one's coming and going in the Dhamma isn't something erratic, like a leaf being blown around in the wind. It's like a king who kind of goes places with ceremony. You see the way a king moves with his entourage. When he arrives at a place, it's kind of like a dignified. And when he departs from a place, it's dignified. And kind of like a leaf going around in the wind is kind of, or like somebody being chased by an animal. When they arrive at a place, they kind of arrive in a huff. And when they depart, they're departing in a huff. So in this way, we can try to bring these faculties together, this rational faculty, this intuitive faculty, so that we can arrive at places like kings. We can stay like kings and we can depart like kings for the sake of going to places to develop in the Dhamma. Okay? So leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.